Welcome to CMOs Without Borders.
I'm Joel Crampton. I help financial advisors, RIAs, and wealth managers replace scattered marketing with strategic systems that boost AUM and production volume.
I'm Mandy McPhee. I am a fractional chief marketing officer and work with founders who are doing too much and need someone to turn their scattered marketing into a system that actually drives results.
Hello, welcome to the most recent episode of CMOs Without Borders. We're in season 2 now, into 2026. Our guest today is Mike Walrod. He's a fractional integrator and coach working with companies who are running on the EOS system, which is the entrepreneurial operating system. His firm is Incite Business, and he has over 25 years of experience working across a wide variety of industries, but he has a strong background in financial services. Right now, he's helping businesses try to find that clarity and alignment and the accountability that they need to scale their operations. He's also the local leader of our ENRG chapter, which is EOS focused. That's something new, but that's a nationwide organization that does focus on EOS. Mike, anything else you want to share before we jump into some of our questions? Talk about your background and how you became an EOS integrator. And we'll actually dive into a little bit of what the EOS system is.
Mandy and Joel, thanks for having me.
Yep.
Joel, I don't know if I can add anything to that. That was really good. I don't know where you got all that great information.
Yeah, from your LinkedIn bio. So you're doing really good from a marketing standpoint
Yeah.
to describe yourself. So kudos to you.
That was awesome. Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah, so my background, I've been in operations pretty much my whole professional career, in some shape or fashion. Started out in retail financial services, spent 20 plus years doing that in all different aspects. Great learning experience, just all kinds of fun things to learn. Probably around 2014, I kind of got to the point where it's like, I've done everything in the organization and I'm pretty entrepreneurial. At least I thought I was pretty entrepreneurial. It's like, well, let's go figure out, what's the next stage for what I wanted to do. And so, I kind of started out doing, it was consulting, but it was kind of all over the board. It took a while for me to figure out like what I wanted to do. So I would dabble in different things. Like I did some strategic planning, some M&A stuff where I would help companies position themselves for sale. Dabbled in a little bit trying to help companies, who wanted to be sold. Did all kinds of things like that. Then in 2019, that I had my first experience with being an integrator with an EOS company. So it was a fractional integrator engagement.
How did you get started though? Like, how did you even hear about the EOS?
It was
Gino Wickman's book, Traction. Like, how did you even hear about it?
It was one of those books that everybody's like, hey, you need to read this book.
Yeah.
And so prior to 2019, I read the book. I thought it was great. And I was like, this makes a ton of sense. All these things make a ton of sense. But it's like other books I've read where, how do you actually apply this stuff? Because there's all those business books that say all these great things, but then do you ever see anybody actually doing any of that stuff? And,
the execution is the tough part.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the EOS system and what the stuff is.
Yeah, so EOS, what I like about it and what I found when I had my first engagement was it has all of these proven tools that small and medium businesses can use to help run their company and really help kind of take them to the next level. There's an accountability chart, which is different than an organizational chart. They have L10 meetings, which is the structure that you have your weekly leadership team meetings.
L10 means level 10, which means
level 10, which go ahead.
No. So you try to have a meeting you rank as a 10. And not have all these ones and twos meetings that could have been an email.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like historically meetings suck. People don't like going to meetings because there's no agenda, there's no end result, there's no action items, there's no accountability. And so what the L10 provides is this structure and processes to make level 10s or these leadership meetings better. And there's structure, there's accountability. They're really, really good. And the theory is, we're not striving for perfection. It's 10. Everybody, when they see a 10, they're like, hey, this is perfect. You just want to hit all the buttons. You want to make sure the meeting starts on time, ends on time. You're not wasting time. You're talking about the right things. And most importantly, if you have issues that you're discussing, you're figuring out, how do I move ahead on those things? Let's don't kick the can. Let's pick some like definitive action items to move forward, and people will own those action items.
Yep, solve
So
problems. That's the very end of the meetings. It's like, what are our issues? Let's solve these issues. Let's focus on, everyone has issues. There's maybe 10 things on the board that you want to talk about, but let's take the top 3. You all vote on them basically and say, what are the ones that we want to focus on this meeting? And then let's tackle these. Let's not, like you said, Mike, kick the can down the road.
it's and that's in the IDS section of the L10, which is identify, discuss, and solve. And that's the great thing is you can bring, as a leadership team, everybody can bring issues that they want to discuss. But then when you get down to it, just like you have to rank, like what are the top 3 things we need to deal with right now? And we might have 10 on the list, but what are the 3 things? And it all ties to quarterly goals, annual goals, 3-year goals, 10-year goals. So it's all this great interconnected activity. You're just not randomly trying to fix something. It all has to tie together and make sense. And so that's really what, when I first, like my first engagement, when I was my first EOS integrator engagement, that's what really resonated with me, is because I've had, 20 plus years of crappy meetings and bad structure and bad process where you go in and you got to fix all those things. And so this is kind of, in my mind, I kind of see it as a blueprint and guardrails that companies can use and I can bring in as tools to help companies move forward. And so that's really kind of why I have stuck with being a fractional integrator for companies that run EOS.
So when I hear what you're saying and listen to everything that you're doing, it's really about building the foundation of a company, building the structure and the systems to put in place, which is very similar to what Joel and I do from a marketing standpoint. Yep. So while we're not looking at the full operating system the way you do, we are looking at the marketing system and ensuring that we're putting those marketing foundations and systems in place to help a company scale and grow faster than if they didn't have those foundational elements in place.
Yeah, it's extremely similar in the approach and what the end results, what you want them to be. Because what I've done recently over the last 2 or 3 years is I used to be a fractional COO, and I still every now and then will do a fractional COO engagement, but I would rather be an EOS integrator, mostly because there's structure and there's processes. And so when I go in as a fractional COO, a lot of times I have to redo a bunch of stuff, and it takes longer and it's harder. But companies, what I've noticed about companies that are running EOS is there's absolute buy-in from, at least from the owner and most of the leadership team, on making changes and moving forward. And I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing, where you go into an engagement and you have great ideas and great practices and great processes, but you hit this roadblock because someone doesn't want to do it, or there's no buy-in or something like that, where I won't go into an engagement unless the visionary, who's the owner of the company, is just like, yeah, absolutely, we got to do these things. We got to make changes. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys, that if there's no buy-in, what happens?
It's interesting that you say that, because, Joel and I have talked in previous podcasts around accountability and the way decisions are being made right now. In Canada, a lot of the leadership teams make decisions by committee, voting, whereas in the States, it's a little bit different. You've got a better structure, someone making that decision, whether it's the right person making the decision or not. Talk a little bit about what EOS does with respect to accountability.
Yeah. So one of the nice things about EOS is it provides, there's lots of things, but there's 2 big things that it does that I really appreciate. Is it improves communication throughout the organization, and it improves or it implements accountability, depending on the organization. Sometimes there's none and you got to start somewhere. And so what happens, whether it's at a quarterly meeting, an annual meeting, or an L10, the leadership team, they come together and work together on creating these decisions in the rocks, which are the quarterly projects. And then once the leadership team agrees that this is what we need to do to move forward, which is very similar to what you were saying, like what happens in Canada. It's The leadership team, it's total buy-in from the leadership team on this is what we have to do to move forward. This is what we agree that each of us is going to do to move forward. And then there's weekly check-ins with each of them that basically said, hey, did you do what you were supposed to do this week? You did? Awesome. You didn't? Okay, let's talk about what happened. But it's not, you don't kick the can down the road. You actually, it's like, okay, we all agreed that this is what's important. Now, if something changed, let's have a group discussion about what changed. So, and that's the other thing I like about it, because it's also, it brings in input from the whole organization into what the organization is doing, as opposed to, a lot of companies are top down, and especially small companies, where you have this owner operator who wears all the hats, makes all the decisions, and everybody's just kind of coming along for the ride. EOS changes that to where we're all in this together.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I talk about in my book, The Work That Holds You, is the fact that as a founder, they often wear all the hats. And what they need is a marketing integrator to help them grow their business. I actually used those words specifically because it ties really nicely what we're doing. It ties so nicely into the EOS model.
Yeah, it helps firms grow up. I mean, like you were saying, a lot of firms start as founder-led. They're wearing all the hats. They're doing everything. But at some point, that's not scalable. They have to create systems and processes to take that work, then things that they were doing and they're experts in, and give that to people, but also have systems in place that hold those people accountable. So Mandy and I both work with small, medium-sized businesses, and you're from 5 people to 50 or even 100. But so I think that small and medium-sized business is what really has a lot of impact when they implement EOS. Why does it resonate so well with kind of the small and medium-sized businesses that are just trying to grow up and mature as an organization? And maybe what are some of the things that companies struggle with when they first adopt EOS or another business operating system?
Yeah, I think that's it's a great question, but it's hard because it's different for every organization on why do they bring in EOS, or what resonates with them for EOS. What I've seen is it's a little bit of the leadership team, sometimes a lot of the leadership team, but it's the owner kind of coming to this realization that I was able to get the organization to this level, but I cannot do it myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck. I'm in this rut. I'm in whatever it is. I can't.
Plateaued. Like when you're exercising, like you've done it so much, like you can't go any further. So it's something to change. You mix up your routine, add new exercises.
And so they're just like, okay, what do I do? And so kind of put yourself in an owner's position where there's lots and lots of solutions out there that you could bring in, but it's all a gamble. Right? You're going to pay money to have a consultant come in and tell you what to do, and you're going to potentially do it, hopefully. I think what EOS brings to the table is this track record of success, where there's, so many companies. I don't know the number of companies that are running EOS now, but it's a ton.
I think here in Kansas City, is it 1,000?
That's very possible.
Yeah, so
it's
that's just one
a big
thing.
number.
There's got to be hundreds of thousands of companies across the world running EOS.
Yeah, it's a huge number, and so the success rate of the folks who implement it and run it correctly is really high. And so I think having that kind of proven track record gives them a little bit more comfort that what they do will be impactful, and that kind of leads into what's the scariest thing? The scariest thing or the hardest thing is the change, because you can't go from here to here without some. It might not be foundational change, but it's pretty close to, there's big changes, whether it's changes within the leadership team, changes within the structure, changes with, I wear 3 hats. Well, EOS wants you only wear 1 hat, because it's easy to be good at one thing, it's hard to be good at 3 things. And so that's really the struggle, is people have to be willing to make these changes for the benefit of the organization.
Mike, what are the biggest changes you're seeing in companies, small to mid-sized companies, that need to be made?
Oh man,
that's a loaded question.
It is. But if you had to,
I'm waiting to hear what Mike has to say.
So I'll tell you, like in the context of our conversation, I think, and this is, I've seen this many times, is and I know you, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about this too, because you guys are closer to this than I am. The owner of the company, they started, they grow it, they sell it, they market it, they're doing all of this stuff and they're grinding and they've done a great job. I mean, they're just killing it. It might not be their expertise, but they are absolutely killing it and they get it up to that level.
Yeah.
And then they have to say, all right, I have to trust someone else to do all these things.
That's so tough. Yeah.
How do you get the owner who, knows, the top 10 clients, they know them, they're like friends, how do you give that up? How do you transition that responsibility in that role to someone who will do it better and will make them better? But that's how you're wired for the last however long you've owned the business.
It's not just how you're wired for however long you've owned the business. It's how you build your business based on how you wired yourself over your lifetime. How you lead a company is you learned that through your careers, through your personal life. We see them, a lot of founders holding on to everything right now and doing everything by instinct. I liked the colors that I created for my website. I liked the way that I shaped my logo. It was all personal choice and all based on complete instinct. Trapped in their head. So how do you get that out of their head? How do you build a company and grow exponentially by focusing more on the customer instead of focusing on what you like as the founder? What got you to where you are today doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get you to that exponential growth that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I'm curious. So like one of the things that I try to do is kind of use data and results to get away from,
That's exactly where I was going to go. Yeah.
Emotion, because it's a very emotional thing for the owner and the visionary to give up some of these things. And sometimes I use that to my advantage where I'll say, all right, let's have a little vision session. 4 years from now, where do you want to be? What does it look like? How, what's your life look like? Do you want to look just like this? Awesome. Or do you want more freedom? Do you want to have, a company that's twice the size? And then you're like, okay, what do you got to give up in order to do that?
I've had the pleasure of working in at least 2, probably 3 businesses that are running EOS. And exactly what you said, Mike, is using data as part of that conversation. And Mandy, to your point, these founders, they have their own vision. They think they know it looks good or what's going to resonate with customers. But as a marketing professional, you can automatically see that that's probably not the best way to do it. And so it's a delicate balance of how do you take the emotions that the founder has and the connection that he or she has to what they've built and then marry it with what the actual market wants. And to do that, you use data. And so some of the things that I've done with presidents of companies, our founders, is to do an A/B test. John, I love what you've created. I think we could probably do something different, and I think the market will appreciate if we try something else and it'll resonate a little better. But let's do an A/B test. We'll do what you have done, and then we'll try this out, and then whatever wins, let's let the data decide. So I've done that lots of times, and I think that's what you have to do as a marketer anyway, is to do A and B testing, because what you think is going to resonate with your marketplace may not actually resonate. And so until you test it out and you look at that hard data, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and how critical is that customer conversation? I am constantly asking my founders and the clients that I work with to listen to what their customers have to say, to get on that call and hear what's happening in their customer journey, what is potentially leaking out of their journey based on what they're hearing from customers. So it's really about ensuring that you're doing that deep customer research, and to Joel's point, getting that data, that customer rich data that you need.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I've, where people have come in and had success is when they take the partner approach with the president or the owner or the visionary, where it's not, I'm not coming in and telling you these are the things that you need to do. I'm coming in and we're having a conversation about what's worked, what hasn't worked, what do you want to see, how do we go forward together. And if you have this partnership mentality with them, it's so much easier than you say, dictating things. As soon as I have someone come in and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, before they've had those other conversations, I was like,
You're like, time
this
out,
is
time out, hold
this
on.
is not going to go well.
Yeah.
This is not the relationship we're looking for.
I mean, that partner is so critical when you think about a partner versus someone coming in to tell you what to do. When you're going in and saying, you've got to do this right now, you haven't yet built that trust with the founder.
Exactly.
And, trust is so critical, especially in the financial services industry that Joel and I are in.
Yeah.
It's, building that partnership builds the relationship and then builds that trust.
Yep. Trust is huge. It's in everything that I do as an integrator. Because as a fractional integrator, I'm kind of the new kid on the block.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not with them every day, all day, and so building that trust is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a lot of time to get there. And I think my advice to other fractional integrators or fractionals or anything is be patient and be disciplined when you're trying to build trust. Because if you go too fast, it just has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So I want to shift into a little bit of a sensitive topic because, like I said, I've been in organizations that have been running EOS, and the EOS, the traction model is set up with pillars of functions within the business. You've got finance, you've got operations, and then when it comes to sales and marketing, the EOS system groups them together. And being a marketing leader in those organizations is a little bit of identity crisis that I think happens because sales is not marketing, marketing is not sales. And when they're lumped together in such a way, I think for me personally, I felt a little bit of a friction there. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm curious what your thoughts are on why those get grouped together. And then for me personally, what happens when a sales leader owns both sales and marketing, or marketing leader owns sales and marketing? And so I think right now there's a shift in the world with like chief revenue officer versus a chief growth officer. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that sales and marketing pillar and
Yeah.
how they can work together, but also work apart and have standalone because they both focus on slightly different things.
Yeah. That is, as I've gone into different organizations, it's different in every single one. I think the challenge is the perception of EOS and the accountability chart. Having the visionary, the integrator, then the admin, finance, and then the operations, and then sales or marketing or revenue or however you want to do it. And it's like, hey, there's these five. This is the five. And what my take on EOS is, it's not necessarily the five. It's whatever makes sense for that organization. So it could be six or it could be seven. I mean, I've had leadership teams that have had 5 seats in that first level because that's what made sense for that organization at that time. Like sometimes we'll split operate, especially if it's a manufacturing organization. We may have 2 different ops seats on the leadership team. Finance and admin. It's kind of the same theory there. Is the finance person going to also be in charge of HR and IT and all these other things? And so is it, how do you, and so kind of the theory is less is more. The fewer seats you have, the easier it is to focus on it. My take on that is kind of your take, is sales and marketing are two different things. And so as an integrator, what I'm very sensitive to that. You don't want one overshadowing the other. So it's kind of a hard. What I do as an integrator, what I try to do is make sure that the marketing is not overshadowed. There has to be a really, really strong marketing program. Otherwise, what is the salespeople going to do? Who's feeding the sales people?
We've all seen the horror stories of salespeople creating marketing material.
And some of it's based on the size of the organization too, unfortunately, in budget. How do you get, everything that you want? And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you inherit this thing. And so you have to figure, okay, 6 or 12 months from now, how can we grow the organization so we can split that out better? Or that makes more sense. It's a hard thing. I think that the best thing that I could say is, and with the implementers I've worked with are really good at this part, is let's put aside when we're creating the accountability chart, we put aside the names. We know who works here and we know what they've done. Put that all aside. What is the best structure for the organization for the next 3 to 6 months? That's what our accountability chart should be. And then let's fill in the seats. That's where it gets a little bit kind of weird in that you might not have the right person for that seat right now. And so you're going to have, for a while, you might have to say, all right, we're going to have this person in this seat, knowing that at some point we're going to have to do something different. Yeah, I think in the ideal world, you have those potentially split up.
Yeah.
How many times have you guys seen someone, and this is a loaded question right back at you guys, someone who can manage marketing and sales equally well?
Yeah, it's a difficult, that is a difficult one. With sales leading marketing, it will always lead to what does the sales team need, and will always lead to that. Whereas when you've got marketing led companies, it is really about integrating in. Now I've said that in a way that sounds like sales, marketing leading is better. That isn't always necessarily the case.
Right.
But you have to have a strong partnership between sales and marketing, regardless. So we talked about a little bit about partnership with the leader and the founder, but there is just as much partnership across the entire leadership that's necessary between sales, marketing, product, finance. As a marketer, we need to make sure that we are just as accountable for those financial goals as everybody else on the leadership team.
Right.
I would say that sales can't function effectively without having a strong foundation in place, a strong foundation of what the messaging system is and what they're going out and talking about. Where I've seen mistakes in that is that without that strong messaging, you've got the salespeople carrying different messages across the board.
Yeah.
They often carry a product feature message rather than a customer-led message. So I've always said, before you put a salesperson in, you should at least have your foundational elements of what your brand is, your messaging system. Pulling it out of the founder's head and putting it on paper is so critical to get the entire organization saying the same thing to their customers at all times and talking about meeting customer needs and benefits rather than meeting the company's product feature needs.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think one of the things you talked about is the leadership team, and I think that's the other benefit of EOS and having a strong integrator, making sure that, because you have annual goals, you get together as a leadership team and say, hey, this is where we want to get this year, and this is what it looks like, and here's our rocks for the first quarter to get that done. And, if you don't have a good harmony, not just between sales and marketing, but between the whole leadership team, then you're going to start missing. And that's when you start digging in. It's like, okay, where are we missing? And where, what needs to change? Because there's a little bit of, everybody checking each other to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction. But if we're not holding each other accountable, and then that gets off base, it really makes it hard to achieve all the goals that you want to achieve that in the first year, let alone your 3-year goal or your 10-year goal.
It's interesting to see how the EOS model has shifted a little bit because of the pace of the world nowadays. Used to set out what your 10-year vision looked like for the company, and now I'm starting to hear CEOs dialing it back and saying, we have no idea what the world's going to look like in 10 years. Like, let's look at a 5-year plan. Like, what's the next 5 years? And even, what does 2 years look like? I mean, if you think about it, ChatGPT wasn't even around 2 or 3 years ago, and just seeing how much of an impact that has, the new technology has had, not only across marketing, but whole organizations and your go-to-market messaging. So I think is anything you want to add to kind of that 10-year vision outlook? Is it still a viable look for companies, or is it just with the pace of the world nowadays, is that maybe not even something companies should look at?
It's interesting because if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I would say, predominantly everybody's still doing, a 10-year look. Here's what I want to be in 10 years. Now it's a mix. I still have some that, like, I had a professional services company that was not tied to technology. They're like, 10 years, it makes total sense. This is our big, huge, this is where we want to be in 10 years. It made sense for them. I've got a couple of tech companies And 3 years for them is like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we want them to do that because we want them to look, as far out as they possibly can in order to stretch what they're trying to do, whether that's 10 years or 5 years or 3 years. I think you're right in that EOS is, and there are probably some EOS purists who may disagree with us a little bit, but I do think EOS is evolving to fit organizations a little bit more. So I do think, if 3 years is your long-term trajectory and it's your organization, that's what you got to do.
There's so much change happening especially in the tech world. So I typically work with fintech companies, but there's so much change happening in technology and in their worlds. Does a 10-year vision make sense when change is constant right now?
I think it depends on how granular you get on your 10-year. I think is the challenge.
Yeah.
So, like the organizations I've talked with recently that have a 10-year, it's a kind of an exit strategy. I want the organization to be at this level of revenue and this it's not even a multiple because they don't know what their value is going to be back then. But what's my top line looks like, what's my cash flow look like, and that's really all they're saying for 10 years. They're not kind of getting into. But then at the 3 year, they're just like, okay, this is what it looks like. This is like kind of really digging in. Like here's the personnel that I need to have. Here's the different departments I need to have, or here's the different programs we're going to look at. But then you got to be fluid. You got to be able to react depending on the organization. A lot of it is based on the visionary and the leadership team on what they want. But it's a fascinating time that we live in right now. AI and all these things. It's just amazing. It's kind of like you're holding on for dear life.
Yeah, let's talk about AI for a second. In your world, as you in EOS, how is AI impacting what you do and impacting companies? What are you seeing?
So I'll start with the second part first. I work with mostly smaller companies, and so they're just starting to use AI themselves on just like research and how do I do this, and kind of exploring, but not like jumping into the deep end on it. There's some companies that are really going crazy on it, my message to them is get into it. Don't wait, because your competitors are getting into it, and there's a lot of value there. For me, AI has been a huge benefit for my practice for a lot of different ways. One of the things that it allows me to do is just a ton of analytics and research on even L10 meetings. If I have a leadership team meeting and I record it and I record the transcript, I can download the transcript and do an analysis on that and just make sure, hey, did we capture all the to-dos? Is there anything kind of recurring things that are going on that I missed? How am I doing as an integrator? What did I miss? What should I have done differently? And so this is like self assessment is good. It can help. Like I'll download scorecards and say, okay, what are the trends that we need to be looking for? You put in, here's the industry, blah 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 blah. What are hot spots on this scorecard that we need to be concerned about? So it's been really really good. From supplementing my practice.
Yeah, supplementing is really critical. It doesn't replace you, doesn't replace your judgment. It's just helping accelerate what you're doing it in a faster way.
And I think, from your guys' perspective on the marketing side, I think how is that? Because I could see where people are like, hey, I'm going to just create my own marketing program using AI, and off we go.
And they do.
And and how effective is that? And what are they missing out? If someone does that, what are they missing out on?
It's so similar because if I'm working with financial advisors, we can take that same argument and toss it to them and say, hey, Mr. Financial Advisor, like your clients can do the same thing. They can go into ChatGPT and say, create a retirement plan for me. What are all the things I need to do? And that's
What
not going to
stocks
get.
should I invest in?
Yeah, that's not the right approach. But yet, firms will do the same thing. Is like, let me create a marketing plan for myself, and the same thing. Like, that's not exactly the right plan for your particular firm.
Here's a problem from a marketing standpoint when a founder tries to go in who isn't a marketer. When they try and go in and create a marketing plan using ChatGPT or Claude or one of those AI tools, they don't know what to ask it.
Right.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So it's hard to create a valuable plan that makes sense for your business when you're not sure what to prompt chat with.
And I think that's the challenge nowadays. And when I say nowadays, it's like from 6 months ago, is creating value for ourselves. Like as a person, I bring value above the AI tool because I have this depth of experience. I've worked with 25 different companies. I know all the ins and outs. I know the right questions to ask, and I'm able to react in a way that makes sense. And
That's
then
right.
all of a sudden, we're selling ourselves in a different way to prospects and clients.
AI can't replace your experience as an integrator. It doesn't replace that.
Or
No,
your instincts, or your those feelings that you have as a human, that something just isn't right, or we're missing something. And I
That's
often
right.
have the same thing when I'm talking through ChatGPT. Is like, thank you for putting that all together, but something's off. You're missing something, and then
Yeah.
it'll say, "Oh, you're right. Thank you for, yeah, like, that's exactly what was missing." Like, come on.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that we offer is live communication. Being able to have a conversation with someone and see their responses, understand the responses, get kind of a heat check on them, how things are resonating or not resonating, and then adapt and respond accordingly. Whereas if it's prompts, you miss all those things. So one of the things about being an integrator is sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people. And the values that I bring is, I have the ability to have a hard conversation with someone without it feeling like it's a hard conversation. But there is a lot of emotion. There's a lot of things, and we kind of get to the root cause of stuff. Not everybody can do that with AI. There is something missing there.
Well, AI has no emotion, and that humanity, that element, that human touch is missing out of AI. And even in marketing is very emotional. When you think about advertising and how we get to cultural nuances and the pulling out the emotions of people that we want to pull out to get them to investigate your product or service, it needs that humanity in there that AI just can't provide.
Well, and I think it comes back to what we've talked about before with trust. The organizations that I work with and have talked to that are not big AI users, there's a lack of trust in the output from AI. Sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's unwarranted, but they're used to the things that they've done in the past, so they just can't get past that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a great resource. Sometimes it's not the best resource, but in their mind, it's like, how do I get this trust? Who's going to check? Who's going to fact check the fact checker, kind of a thing. And so I think trust is an important part of that.
100%.
Mike, appreciate all the thoughts that you've given us today for those businesses that are interested in graduating from founder-led, kind of ad hoc business growth into a very structured, systemized approach. How can people get started with the EOS system? Should they read the book Traction, or should they contact somebody like you who's a fractional integrator? What does that process look like for people who are interested in taking their business to the next level? Maybe not 2x, but like 10xing their business.
And I think a couple different ways. If you're already using EOS and you just want to talk to someone about how do I make it better,
Yeah, there's a lot of people are self-implementing that, right?
There's a lot of people who didn't use an implementer and self-implemented, and they're kind of struggling a little bit. And so if anybody ever wants to talk about that, I'm happy to have a conversation about what are you doing? What does it look like? How can you improve that type of thing? If you're not running EOS and you're exploring it, again, you can reach out to me. What I will do is I'll introduce you to an implementer or some implementers that are in your area, and what they'll do, they'll have a conversation with you and do what's called a 90. Well, they'll walk through you and your leadership team. They'll walk through, here's what EOS is. And it's free and it's great. I mean, it gives you just a really nice overview of what EOS can do for your organizations. EOS Worldwide has a list of implementers you can, and they have tons of resources if you're interested about EOS also. But I would look at that website for an implementer, or you can reach out to me and I can refer you to some implementers from your area. I know I have relationships with implementers all across the country. And then, certainly reading Traction is a great, I mean, even if you don't use EOS, there's some really great tools in Traction that you can use in your business. I think the other thing I would say is if you're in the Kansas City area, like Joel mentioned earlier, we have a monthly EOS coffee. If you're interested in learning more about that, reach out to me. I can tell you the when, where, and why about that whole thing. It's a fun group of people that we're trying to grow the EOS community. Thank you guys for having me on here. This has been fascinating. I always love the hard conversations, especially around sales and marketing. I do think one of the things that I try to do with my clients is, figuring out how do you bring in the different disciplines and educate the organizations on what are you missing. And so I would assume that you guys, if I had a client and they were doing marketing on their own and not doing it well, an introduction to you guys, you could come in and say, hey, this is what we can do, this is how we can help, and just kind of a cool introduction to what this really could look like if we wanted to really grow the organization.
Yeah, not a lot of founders know whether or not they're doing marketing well. Some might say they are, some might say they aren't, but absolutely, I think when it comes to founders who are doing the marketing all themselves right now, it's important to at least have a conversation with myself or Joel or another fractional chief marketing officer to help them, or marketing integrator.
And if you really are interested in EOS, Kansas City is hosting the National EOS Conference in April this year, 2026. I don't know. I think they're also potentially hosting it for 2027. So Kansas City's blowing up. We're known more for Chiefs and Taylor Swift. The Chiefs have not had a great year this year, but the World Cup, we're going to be one of the host cities this year, so that's fantastic. So there's lots of reasons to come visit to Kansas City. Mike, appreciate your time. It's been great having you on. We'll share all of his contact information in the show notes. Other than that, thank you for listening to CMOs Without Borders, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.